You are a slug cat, as crazy as that sounds. Having been separated from your family, your only chance at survival is using your wits to navigate the deadly terrain. Rain World, a recently released Adult Swim game, is about exploring an alien world as a small and particularly vulnerable creature. The general flow of gameplay is fairly standard for survival exploration games. The player explores the world during the daytime, collecting food and just seeing what there is to see. As the night approaches, the player has to find one of various shelters throughout the world so as to not be swept away by the torrential downpour. To complicate things, there are creatures that see you as their own food source, so sidestepping such hazards is of paramount importance. In terms of a goal, there doesn't really appear to be any for this game. It is an experience of pure survival and exploration, to my knowledge. There are minor narrative elements as the player learns a bit about the world around them, but it's mostly about the exploration. So, how is said exploration? The first thing that needs to be looked at are the controls. They are by far the worst part of this game. The layout itself is fairly simple, with movement controls and a jump, use, throw system. However, the responsiveness of the controls is quite frankly maddening. Small changes in terrain cause serious issues in the character's movement. I was plagued with having to fight against my character to even jump up simple ledges most of the time. Part of the problem with the controls is that the slug cat is an obstacle to itself. By that I mean that if you turn around, your character basically has to climb over itself, causing major difficulties, especially in numerous tight spaces of the game. If this were a chill exploration game, I could pass over these bad controls, but this game is freaking hard, and a hard game needs equally tight controls to make it fair. So beyond the controls, the exploration is fairly straightforward within the levels. Each day the player will venture out to find food in the form of flies or fruits or really whatever you can shove into that little mouth of yours. Once you have the 4 foods, you need to hibernate, which allows you to not be killed by the downpour, aka allowing you to sleep through the night. The player can focus on exploration. What becomes a problem is really moving between regions. Each time the player hibernates, they gain what can only be described as a level, and each time you die, you lose one of those levels. Those levels really only have the use of allowing you to move from one region to another. In essence, if you want to move from Area 1 to Area 2, you'd have to be at least, say, a level 3 to move through there. With the terrible control scheme and almost universal one-hit kills, moving to a new area often requires a dull grind of food, hibernate until you get to the right level, and then hope that you survive to get to a new hibernation pod in the new area. I mean, what's really frustrating about this game is that it had so much potential to be a great game. However, it broke itself with terrible controls and difficulty, and speaking of that difficulty, that does need to be addressed. This game is brutal. Enemies will one-hit kill you and they can chase the player from screen to screen. On the surface, this is fine. I like hard games, they're great. What is problematic is that much of the difficulty is created not by clever enemies or level design, but by terrible controls and random chance. The movement controls have already been addressed, and they are terrible, especially when trying to run from any threat. In terms of random chance, the enemies seem to appear at random places each day, at least from what I've seen. You can walk through a completely empty corridor one day and do the same thing the next day, only to have a crocodile come at you from both directions, trapping you with no way out. And yeah, that did happen. I'm totally not salty about it at all. Anyway, it reeks of artificial difficulty instead of finely crafted difficulty. Okay. So what about the aesthetics? If the exploration doesn't have a particular goal, and I certainly haven't seen one yet, then the world must look great. Well, not really. The aesthetics certainly aren't terrible, but they're cluttered and fuzzy. Some areas are so cluttered that it can be hard to tell where you can walk. Without a good lore to back up the world, which after hours of play still hasn't developed, it just seems like random empty ruins. There's little personality in the aesthetics themselves. Where the game does succeed aesthetically is in the enemies. They look pretty darn cool and move in rather alien manners. If they weren't so keen on eating me, I would definitely give them a closer look, but, you know, they kinda wanna eat me. Overall, Rain World is an unfortunate work on so many levels. It has so much potential, but it's thrown out of the window by being stupidly difficult and having seemingly no point to it. I would have put the game down within even the first hour if I wasn't reviewing it because I was quite frankly just bored of the game. And while that became slightly better as the game went on, I found myself having no actual drive to explore. There's no progression in the character itself, and there doesn't appear to be any lore to learn, so why continue to explore in such a brutally difficult game? If you're willing to work through terrible controls and all the difficulty, there is something to be said in the environmental dynamics and enemy designs. However, I can't recommend it. In fact, I would recommend against the game. And certainly, I would recommend against it at the $20 price tag it has at this point. With that, thanks for watching and, as always, enjoy the rest of your day.